Welcome everybody out to this fourth video for the free Takt University course that is intended to be used in any university anywhere around the world to learn the concepts behind Takt planning, steering, and control. And I want to cover the topic before we go into the macro level Takt planning, which I'm super excited about. I want to cover Takt and CPM, and I really think that you're going to enjoy this because this is very enlightening. Even if you've taken CPM courses in your university where they're pro CPM, I think you can take some of these concepts and either see CPM for what it really is and use some of these concepts if you ever have to use CPM in your career. So I've got a really nice presentation here for you that I absolutely think you're going to love. And I want to start out with a couple of problems. I want to talk about three major problems in construction, which are the real culprits behind why we don't have flow. So let's talk about when trades are not packaged properly. So when trades are not packaged properly, we have a situation where, let's say the first trade takes 3 days, second one takes 5, that's our problem, and then it goes 3, 3, 3, 3. And they're going through the zones. So the first time it's entering zone 1, then zone 2, then zone 3, then zone 4. Well, this is a problem, and I'm going to show you why. Let me go ahead and simulate what this looks like when we actually simulate it through 4 different takt times, okay? Without proper work packaging for speed, you'll end up with the following. So before you start, you'll end up with everything prepared. Then you start and your first wagon or task, by the way, task is an individual activity. A wagon could be individual, but it's mainly the packaging of work within a zone in a certain takt time. And sometimes you have more than one work package or task in there. So a task or a wagon. This first one starts properly. And then the second takt time, it moves forward. And then our longer duration item moves into zone 1. What happens in takt time 3 is that we have the first trade moving on, but the bottleneck trade can't move on. It's stuck. And you'll see we have a problem there between those two tasks or wagons. And so now you have a bottleneck. So this bottleneck right here is called a trade bottleneck, and it's definitely a problem in our production system. So we have to keep an eye out for it. And this is what it looks like inside of a takt plan. And this is why I love takt planning over other systems, is you can see the normal pace of the first task or wagon, and then you can see the slower bottleneck trade for that task or wagon, and you can see where you have inefficiency gaps. So that's why I think it's quite remarkable. Now let's go to a different one. When zones are not leveled. Well, this is a big deal, okay? So when zones are not leveled, we have a problem, and we call these zone bottlenecks. So let's go ahead and take a look. I've gone ahead and mapped this out, and I want to orient you first to say the first zone has a work density of 40, 41, 83. So this is the most dense zone, and then 40. In the first activity, so we're prepping. Then when we do our first takt time, we're in this first zone. Then we move to the second zone. Then we move to the third, and everything looks all fun and great. But when you go to the fourth, it doesn't move on, and you have this bottleneck. You have this crash of the activity or the wagon because there's more work in that zone, and we have a zone bottleneck, and that's a problem. Let me show you what it actually looks like on a takt plan and why I think takt planning is so superior to other systems. You see normal flow, and then you're like, oh, wait, it has an interruption, but it doesn't do that just on one, right? It does that on all of them, which means that this zone is a problem. We have a zone bottleneck, and that's definitely one of the driving components. So actually, let me do something real quick. When you go back, this is the pace of your job. This right here is the pace of your job. So your trade bottlenecks, your zone bottlenecks actually dictate the pace. It's not some random imaginary critical path. So now let's talk about the third one, when you don't have the right number of zones. When you don't have the right number of zones, you have a problem. So I'm going to start this out by saying, hey, what if you do have the right number of zones? Okay, so if you do have the right number of zones, and in this case, we're assuming it would be 4, you have your contractual promise, and then once you did your rezoning, you gained some time, and you were able to gain buffers. The other thing is you have a nice zone size, and you have enough room in that zone. So this is what it should look like when you have the right number of zones, okay? Now let's look at what happens when you have too few or too little zones, or the zones are too large, right? You have your contractual promise, you haven't gained too much time, and so you haven't gained too many buffers, and you'll notice this by the fact that the zones are too large for the trade, and really we're just wasting time. So you haven't gained enough buffers, and you're really wasting time, and I would also say you're wasting some space. Now, Jason has said, let's have more zones, let's have smaller zones. Okay, super fine. Is there a point of diminishing return? Okay. If you do that, here's your contractual promise. You've gained time, but you've got more than enough buffers. Maybe you have too many. Like, let's say that if these two weren't needed, the owner's going to be like, hey, you're sandbagging. The other thing with this is your zone size might be too small for the wagon itself, and it may be too hard and cause too much dependency is what I call it. And that would be a problem, right? So these are things that we need to look at. Another one is work in progress. Work in process is manufacturing. Work in progress is in construction. Let's take a freeway analogy for this. I'm going to have some fun here. This is probably the best way that I've found to explain this. After the three of zone bottlenecks, trade bottlenecks, and having the right number of zones, this fourth concept of aligning work in progress is a really key concept. Let's say you have a freeway, okay, and each of the cars on the freeway are utilizing the freeway. You can see in here we've got a nice spread. We've got some buffers. We're enabling other cars to change lanes. So the bottom line is you must align the utilization of the resource with the capacity of the resource. That's pretty self-explanatory probably to most people, but let's look at some things. On a construction project, let's look at what happens when we have low resource utilization or none. Well, is this the fastest way for people to get to work? Well, no, because they're going to have to use surface streets and go through a lot of stop signs and a lot of intersections. So this isn't very nice, right? Let's look at high utilization, okay? What happens when we have high utilization of a resource? And even if we have that resource and there's a bottleneck or an accident, we even add more cars to the resource. So we have high utilization. Well, this isn't good because everybody knows on a freeway, the more cars you get, the longer it takes to get to work. So this is bad and not really what we want to see. And so what we do want to see here is we want to see the resource being balanced with utilization, with buffers in between, and regulating the cars that are entering the resource. So this would be aligning or controlling work in progress. Okay, and it's the fastest way for a freeway to run. So here are some questions. If we would not limit freeway traffic to zero, why would we do it in construction? Okay, we wouldn't. If panicking a freeway only makes everyone's travel time take longer, why would we pack a construction site? That's a good question because people do it all the time. And then if adding more cars to an already packed freeway or behind an accident only makes it worse, why would we add crews and labor when we are in trouble on our schedule? And that's done all the time. So these are fair questions. And so we don't limit work in progress, we don't increase it, we don't push it, and we don't measure construction success by how much work in progress you can have. We align your work in progress to the capacity of the resources. This is lean. And so those four things are really key for us to understand. Look out for trade bottlenecks, that's the pace of your job. Look out for zone bottlenecks, that's the pace of your job. Understand how zoning it properly can affect your project. And then number 4, understand that you must have aligned work in progress. And so what I want to do in trying to explain to you the differences between Takt and CPM, I want to start by anchoring you to the last planner system. So the last planner system is designed to respect people, collaborate, plan with the last planners, and use visual environments. When you have last planner, you will see that you have a meeting system, and you will at least meet weekly, meet for pull plans, look ahead planning, weekly work planning, and you'll meet for day planning in your daily huddle. That's how you know you'll have last planner on your job site. And then another thing is that you'll notice that trades are respected. It's a collaborative environment where the trades are actually participating in the system, and you'll notice that you have key deliverables. So in the last planner system, you'll have a master schedule which controls your milestones. You will also have key deliverables such as pull plans which coordinate the sequence up to one of those milestones. You will have a look ahead plan which looks out 6 weeks to align work and remove roadblocks. And you'll also have a weekly work plan that filters out activities, and the trades basically create a commitment plan with handoffs so they can execute work for the next week. And then you'll also see that you have a day plan and you're able to track your percent plan complete. So if you have a project and you're using Last Planner, those are the key things that you'll have. What I've noticed here, and one of the key points I want to make, is that the Last Planner system is not enough to successfully manage your project. You must have a working First Planner system as well, paired with Takt. This is absolutely key. And so let me talk to you about what happens to the last planner system when you have a CPM. And it's actually quite tragic. With CPM, you have an incorrect overall project duration. We've actually observed this. And you don't have the right strategic plan. That also means that you have inaccurate milestones throughout. And it's a massive problem because having milestones set enables you to do pull planning. And pull planning properly is absolutely key. And when you don't have the right milestone for pull planning, then the rest of the sequence in your backwards and forwards or your forwards and backwards pass is incorrect. If the pull plan is messed up, every single thing after that will be messed up. And so you will have time that's wasted from batching from an incorrect milestone and because you're pull planning too much space or too much work. The other thing with CPM is that your look-ahead plans have an incorrect level of detail, meaning they're not broken up by zone, they're not timed by location, they're not optimized. So again, they're wasting time. Weekly work plans are interesting. Everybody who's tried to implement Last Planner with CPM knows what I'm talking about is true, that you're going to typically go ask all of your trades, hey, create your weekly work plan, then we'll aggregate that, then we'll update the CPM. It literally takes countless hours to do this, and it's a complete waste of time, and then it just becomes a guess, and we're not vertically aligned to milestones. It's an absolute nightmare. Also, when you're using CPM, the day plan does not align with the schedule, and they're not able to measure real data, and root causes are not understood from a percent plan complete standpoint. So the worst thing that could ever happen to Last Planner is actually CPM. So the problem with Last Planner is the critical path method. It's absolutely horrific and it will only hurt the system. The bottom line is that CPM will drain the system like a parasite on a human host. In the future, you'll be able to read a book about why CPM is so damaging. But in the meantime, what I recommend is that you pick up the book that's actually called on Amazon now, Elevating Pre-Construction Planning. It's about the first planner system, the book Takt Planning, Takt Steering and Control, and the book The Lean Builder, which covers the last planner system. And it's really quite nice. You put those systems together and you'll have a lean project site. It's pretty remarkable. So this is what happens when you use last planner system with the Takt Production System. First of all, you have a macro level Takt plan, and these milestones are correct because you have trade flow. You know what's possible. So this milestone is correct because you have trade flow. This milestone is correct because you have trade flow. So you can have a correct end date, a correct duration, and you have intermediate milestones that are accurate as well. It's quite remarkable. In the pull plan, one of the biggest mistakes that we have in the industry is that job sites, people are teaching people to pull plan just one area. Well, you can't do that. You have to pull plan by zone and then see if you have diagonal trade flow. So your pull plans will be aligned properly, batched well, meaning it's the right size, covering the right amount of work, and confirmed for flow, meaning you know you'll flow in that system. After you do your pull plan, that will become your norm level Takt plan with good flow, and you will have gained buffers and have a better chance of meeting your end date. That becomes your production plan, and the biggest thing is you gain buffers. Every production plan should have buffers. And then from there, you easily have what I want to point out is a flowable schedule within the next 6 weeks where you can align work and make sure you're removing roadblocks. This is something that's actually useful because it's on a flow and it's vertically aligned. And then when you do your weekly work plans, meaning you filter out your weekly work plan and you're able to actually provide the visual, it's aligned with that diagonal flow and you don't have problems of it being a guess. You don't waste people's time and you have great handoffs according to the Takt Production System. So it's quite remarkable. Then your day plan is actually effective. You're actually planning in vertical alignment and you're able to hit a good percent plan complete. In fact, in Takt, it's okay to not focus on 80%. It's actually okay to focus on 100% for your percent plan complete. So this is absolutely crucial. All you needed was to implement all three of these lean systems together in support of each other. And what I mean by that is the first planner system plus the Takt Production System plus the last planner system, and you're all set. You don't need CPM. CPM is a waste, and it will not show you, as I talked to you about in the beginning, the important items for flow, which are trade bottlenecks, zone bottlenecks, getting the right number of zones, and aligning work in progress. In fact, CPM is horrible about work in progress. It will put you into a downward productivity spiral so fast. So let's give you some examples. This is an example of what a macro level takt plan would look like when you're using TPS. And I'm just going to cover this one area here. Once we have our plan, we can analyze it. So our macro plan is basically our contractual promise. So it takes our slowest speed plus our risk analysis plus our reference class, according to the book, How Big Things Get Done. And that's our contractual promise. And then once we do the norm level takt plan and gain buffers, that's your optimized speed, your risk mitigation strategies, your reference class mitigation strategies, and your buffers. And that equals your production target. So that's really what you want. You want a contractual promise and a production target. We get those by using Kevin Rice's takt calculator, by using the formulas from Marco Binniger and Janos Louis. And what this does is it calculates what our macro range should be and what our norm range should be. And we're able to identify the right zoning and gain those buffers. It's pretty remarkable. Then you pull plan just one representative zone and do your pull plan and your forward and backward paths. It's quite remarkable. The key here is to be able to compare each of your zones and to see if you have flow. And the bottom line is a takt plan is nothing more than multiple pull plans stacked on top of each other according to zone. And a pull plan is nothing more than a single zone in a takt plan. They are interchangeable. And so that's what I want this industry to understand, because that enables us to have flow and to create our norm level production plan, which is what we need to execute work in the field. Because from there, we can filter out our 6-week look ahead and our weekly work plan and really get these visual formats out to the trades in a way that they like to see it. Very, very visual, right? You can see the weekly work plan for the interiors and exteriors and the look aheads. In this one, because I wanted to show it to you, we did 4 weeks, but I prefer to do 4 to 6 weeks is super fine. I typically like to do 6, but this one shows better with 4. So this is what your look ahead and weekly work plans would look like from that same example. And then you can create your day plan, which is where you communicate specific information to the craft and really jam out and then track the right KPIs. But one of the things I want to talk to you about that's really, really cool is that we don't just track percent plan complete in the Takt Production System with Last Planner. We can also track our perfect handoff percentage, our remaining buffer ratio, and our roadblock removal average. So we have more KPIs with Takt than we ever had with CPM and Last Planner. And they're meaningful, they're production KPIs. So in summary, we have our master plan, our pull plan by the right number of zones. So you determine with your trades not only the pull plan but the zoning strategy. That gives you your production plan with buffers and allows you to have a vertically aligned look ahead, weekly work plan, and you can jam out in the system. And that's why I love, love, love it. The basis of takt planning is the takt, so the intersection of time and space, but it's really more the phase. The phase has a sequence, which can be verified with the pull plan, a line of balance, which can be verified with the calculator and the takt formula, buffers, which can be verified with a risk analysis, and that sets your milestone. And what I want to focus on here is that before every phase, we should do a pull plan. Before every first wagon in a zone, we should do a quality pre-con meeting. And before every activity, we should align the supply chain with a buffer. So this is like the framework that we're using. The look ahead and weekly work plan are filtered right from the takt plan in a flow so that you can make work ready and find roadblocks and create the weekly work plan and identify handoffs. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful system. So why am I saying this? Well, in manufacturing, as you all probably know in school, you can have tools and equipment, machinery in a line manufacturing plant, and these red boxes are representing cars, and they move along this flow on a takt time, and they're going the same speed and the same distance apart in a flow. Well, what if we took BMW or Toyota or any of these car manufacturing plants, and we said, we're going to get away from the line manufacturing, and we're just going to move it around in the facility at random. We'll have weird amounts of like resource inventory levels, and it's just chaos, right? Would you ever do that? No, we wouldn't do that. But that's exactly how the industry tells us to run projects. We have trades all over the place in random locations, not flowing, just really nasty, no production, high levels of material inventory. It's ridiculous. And so all we're doing with the Takt Production System is saying, let's get away from that chaos and do what they do in line manufacturing. Let's take all of our trades and let's line them up and then have them flow beautifully beautifully through zones on the project site. That is lean. That's what we should be doing. Let's go ahead and just make sure that we understand how the Takt Production System does this. Whenever you see these diagonal lines, all you're seeing is the train flowing. So that means the first task or wagon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on, along the passage of time. So the intersection of time and space is what gives you this diagonal line. And that's why you see takt plans like this. And so that flow is crucial. And I want to talk to you about something that we lovingly nicknamed Lucy's Law. Okay, everybody, I'm going to take you over here to YouTube for just a second. I'm not going to use the audio because I don't want to get an intellectual property violation here, but basically in this neat skit we're going to also share in the description below, the plot is centered around these two being given a last chance to wrap candies in their first job, and they're doing okay, but then they start to realize that they're getting behind and they start to have real big problems. And you see Lucy over there and Ethel doing just some crazy things, and they're having a hard time of it, but they're going too fast. The speed of production is too fast. So the concept behind Lucy's Law is that when we start to rush and push and panic, we go into a downward productivity spiral. Well, in this scene, they start to hide everything, and you can see Lucy in this color film is like just doing some funny things, and as she puts on her hat, like, you just love the character. She's so funny. And then the supervisor comes in and says, fine, splendid. And then she yells over to the line worker, speed it up a little. And then they're like, oh my gosh. And then as they get to the end, they just can't speed up. And so Lucy's Law is when we have trouble, we shouldn't speed up. We need to slow down and go at the right pace. And so you can check out this video yourself, but it's absolutely funny. And this is an introduction to Lucy's Law. When we have a delay right here, like I'm showing you, typically construction project management teams were taught, go ahead and stack these two activities or burden these activities. Well, that's a problem because according to Lucy's Law, and we've put some chocolates here to show, when you attempt to trade burden or stack, it's just going to bungee back. I used to call this the Bungee effect, but Kate, our CEO, didn't like that title, so we called it the Lucy effect. And basically the bottom line is when you try to burden a trade or stack those activities on top of each other, it will spring back 1 to 3 times because that's not how work actually gets done. We have to understand the Lucy's Law as it applies to flow and that trade stacking. And so if you are using Takt, if you have a delay, you would cascade that delay and eat into some buffers or use some buffers. And those buffers come from the end because we were able to get those from the norm level Takt plan. And so I hope that's clear. So let's talk about why the Lucy effect actually happens. And this is pretty informative. When you bring out more resources to a project site, you begin batching work. And the batching always takes longer, and you're working in more areas, and you're starting more than you're actually finishing work. That leads to context switching, which takes an incredible amount of time, 15 to 45 minutes, in some cases with crews, hours. So you're wasting time there. And with more people on site, team sizes increase, and that communication gets more complex. In fact, it gets exponential as team sizes get larger. On a 4-person team, you'll have 6 communication channels. When you get up to 8 people on a team, it's something like 28 communication channels. So the communication gets harder and harder the larger the team gets. With more people in the crews, the composition of the crews change, and everybody knows that that is detrimental to crew productivity. Without a consistent leader as well, the culture, language, and working habits of the crew make it to where they lose productivity, which is absolutely horrible. And with new people coming to the crews, they need to be onboarded. And how long does that take? Well, probably the fastest would be 7 days. Even at Toyota, where they train people for a month before they start, it takes 2. In construction, it's probably more like weeks. And so that wastes time as well. And until the new resources reach productivity, then project teams start working overtime. And the U.S. federal government in a study found out that overtime is only really effective between week 2 and 6, between 5 and 15%. And then after that, because of fatigue, the production drops, and then it starts to drop what you might say consider exponentially. And then once overtime begins, people, they take their focus out of necessity. It's not the people's fault, off of quality. And then the crew is basically distracted and not installing it right, and then they begin installing work wrong in it. It costs the 2 to 12 times the original cost and time to replace or rework something. So like if you have drywall, sure, it's twice the cost. But if you're ripping out a deck, it could be up to 8 times the original cost. And so that really starts to put people into a productivity spiral, because with all the rework happening, the project team loses focus, and then they begin to experience stops and restarts. And then over to my favorite slide, at this point, the project descends into chaos. chaos, much like a dumpster fire inside of a burning building, inside of a nuclear bomb during a solar flare. Really, this is a problem because when you overburden resources, you have the Lucy effect like in the video, and we can't let that happen if we want to be successful. Let me show this to you in the context of Kingman's formula. This is loosely translated from manufacturing, so I really don't want criticism from the manufacturing world. I'm just giving you my take on it. So when we say, hey, something will take a 4-day duration or a 4-day takt time, we think that, hey, the trade takes 4 days. No. The trade work, value add work, is only a portion, and the other time is spent on variation and low productivity, right? And so when we are entering the concept that, hey, let's just add more labor to it, we're like, yeah, of course, if we add more labor, we're going to go faster, okay? Well, the trade process may be less, but your variation and your low productivity is more. So you have a net loss, and that's why things take longer, and you have the Lucy effect. And that's why this is a problem. So you can't do that, and that's why early on, knowing that we have trade bottlenecks, zone bottlenecks, we have to zone it properly and align our work in progress in the Takt and Last Planner systems is crucial. Otherwise, you will have the Lucy effect and you will struggle. And so one of the things that you will also see in this context is that if you start to bring out more people, you'll also bring out too many materials, which leads to overproduction, which leads to excess inventory, meaning you have to transport it, you have motion. Now you have defects from either taking your focus off of quality or actually moving the parts, which leads to overprocessing to fix it, waiting, and this was all a waste because you didn't use the genius of the team and you're not in alignment. So there's even further waste from trade stacking or trade burdening. The other thing is pushing, rushing, and panicking leads to an inability to focus, poor decision making, communication channels breaking down, increased stress, an erosion of trust, and developing a culture of fear and anxiety. It just doesn't work. That's why we have to maintain a flow. And so the bottom line is Takt Planning is the best support for Last Planner. CPM is not, and we must make sure that we consider that in all of our production planning on construction projects. Really, what we need to do is make sure we have the right system, and we have free content for you. We have podcasts, we have YouTube channels, we have books for you, and we have boot camps. Whatever you need, let us know. Really, what I'm trying to say is that the information is out there, and I'm not even saying come do a boot camp. I'm saying make sure that you have the right training and the right context so that you can use the right system, which is Takt and Last Planner, and not CPM. And so I hope this has made the point and that you've enjoyed this content, and I'll see you on the next video where we're going to start macro level Takt planning. On we go.